Good
Yaffa?
afternoon, everyone. Yes, can you hear
Okay.
me?
Yeah, okay.
Hi, how are you doing today?
I'm good.
Good, good. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Sister Yaffa Bay on American Empire Restored, and I believe today is Thursday, April the 7th of the year 2011. Before we get into some spiritual stuff, I need to touch on a couple of things. One, to make everyone aware so they can prepare, not to scare. And two, to see if I can minimize some of the fear factor involved. I don't know if people are aware of how serious things are becoming right about now. We're looking at a situation where, as I've told you in the past, the Tea Party started out on some excellent stuff. But they became infiltrated to the point that the guy that launched it, he stepped down. He was like, you guys are on some whole other crazy. It wasn't what he was trying to set it up to do or become. And I was talking to a sister earlier today, or someone, and they were like, well, how did the Tea Party become so powerful? Because the Tea Party and their so-called white, so-called Republican agenda is blocking the efforts of the elected President Obama from dealing with the budget. And I advise the sisters not so much that the Tea Party itself is so powerful. The people that they work for are powerful. They have been infiltrated by agents whose interests are for the foreign interests that are attempting to destroy the United States. And by foreign interests, I'm talking about the crown heads of Europe, the heads of the church, and the heads of these so-called international banks. And it was determined as far back as Andrew Jackson that the United States had to be destroyed because she was becoming too wealthy, she was becoming too powerful, she was becoming too independent. It was a thing where it was like, they're getting kind of full of themselves over there in the United States. In a minute, they're not going to need us. They're not going to need kings, queens, and princes. They're not going to need the church. They're not going to need the international banks. And they decided then that they were going to destroy the United States. And they reaffirmed that intent for what most people know to be called the Civil War. And if you go back and listen to Gettysburg Address or read the Gettysburg Address, Lincoln makes it real clear that it was not about what people think it was about. It had nothing whatsoever to do with freeing slaves. What they did is they utilized the liberation of so-called slaves, which was really an afterburner, afterthought. And even Lincoln himself said, I'm not trying to free any slaves. If I could do this without freeing any slaves, I would. I'm not trying to free anyone. But they dangled the so-called liberation of the slaves as a carrot or the race card to instill this anger and hostility in what you currently identify as white people. Hold on one second. These people have come in and they're going to be jumping over the baby who is asleep. I'm going to turn on this fan to see if I can drown out their noise. I really got to get out of here. At any rate, they use the race card to dangle this carrot about, we're going to free the slaves, and this is about freeing the slaves. It had nothing to do with liberating the slaves. It was about these very powerful people, foreign interests, attempting to regain control of all of these so-called white people that ran away and got away, who they used the race card then as they're using the race card now to keep everybody distracted and looking away from what is really occurring. So the point I'm trying to make is this. The current president is attempting to pass the budget with the proposed budget cuts, and the so-called Tea Party-backed individuals that are sitting up there in office are blocking his efforts to move forward. And they are at such a standstill that if an agreement of negotiation or a meeting of the minds does not take place soon, and by soon I mean like now, the intent is to shut down the federal government tomorrow. And a lot of people think, oh, that's no big deal. It'll only be shut down for a couple of days. maybe it will be, and maybe it won't be. It's very possible that they may be shutting it down forever. It may be possible that it'll be shut down for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, a couple of months, could be a year. We really don't know. But they're using the whole, we have a nigger in office, and he's going to, the United States was going along great. They hired a black man, and the whole country was destroyed and lost under the helm of the so-called black man. This destruction of the United States started long before Obama. And I'm going to say that Bush Sr. was the icing on the cake, and Bush Jr. was the cherry on the cake, and Obama's just going to take the fall. And a lot of people are on this whole, if he fails, everybody will become angry with so-called black, because this is the agenda, it has always been the agenda. Anytime these people are attempting to do something, especially something what you call nefarious or sideways and corrupted, they always blame it on melanin-rich people that are currently identified as black. As my sister Lady Ma'at would say, you got to dial 1-800-BLAME-A-NIGGA, which she got from the Mooney father of the twins. At any rate, people are pushing the whole, well, we need to cut back this, that, and the other handout because, it's just a bunch of black people on welfare anyway. If so-called black people in the United States are only 13.5% on the low end is what they say, and 17% on the high end of the entire United States population, it's not possible that all of these handouts are for our people, because our people are struggling right along in tent cities. Don't have much going on at all. Can't get welfare, can't get GR, can't get jobs, can't get this or that. But they've become masterful at making us the fall guy for everything that they're doing. Now, it is assumed that so-called black people went out en masse and voted this brother in office. And I submit to you that's a bunch of bull. So-called black people did not put President Obama in office. First of all, most of our people don't even register to vote. A lot of people that are registered to vote don't go and vote. Some of the people that would like to vote don't qualify. They're felons, they're incarcerated, on parole, or whatever the case may be that makes them non-eligible to vote. Now, I submit to you that if, in fact, you took every single so-called Negro, black, colored, African American in the United States and registered all of them to vote, even the ones that are not eligible, take every prison inmate that looks like us and register them to vote, take everybody of legal voting age and register them to vote, and take all of the children that are not old enough to register at all. If they're 2 years old and they can poke a hole in a card, register them to vote. Take every single one of us, and in addition to registering us, make sure we go to the polls and insist that we vote on Obama. If every single person that could wield this pen and poke a hole in one of these cards that looks like us, the so-called black, had voted for President Obama, that is still not enough votes in the United States to have put that brother in office. And I'm saying my 2-year-old daughter could have got up there and punched holes for Obama, and it still wouldn't be enough votes to get him in office. Not to mention the fact that it doesn't matter what the people want or what the populace wants. They're not the Electoral College. The Electoral College decides who the president is going to be, despite what the people are talking about. And if you guys didn't see that before, then you need to pay attention. The whole point that I'm trying to make is this. They're using this brother as to play the race card that they've been playing for the longest time, to point the finger at so-called black folks while they try to destroy the United States and make absolutely certain that so-called poor so-called white folks and poor so-called black folks do not unify in any type of effort to come against these people that are working for foreign interests to destroy the United States. Now, granted, people that are identified as black have, more than anyone else, the biggest reason to want to see this crap fall. It's like, screw the United States. They've been kicking our butts since they got here. All they do is ride our necks, step on our backs, and treat us like the bastard stepchild that we aren't. However, saying that the United States is horrible and you want it destroyed is one thing, but I submit, as I've always submitted, I don't even think it is the United States government. I think the government has been thoroughly infiltrated, and that's what I'm getting. Now, these individuals that are working for foreign interests have been strategically positioned on the Supreme Court, high positions of FDA, high positions of CIA, high positions of FCC, USDA. They're up there, and they're in Congress, and they're there to make sure that things don't go the way they're supposed to go. And when they don't go the way they're supposed to go, whichever way that is, the so-called black person is going to take the fall, whether it's the populace, for example, on this housing situation, or it's the president. And the so-called black people have been blamed for the housing market crisis because, you know, they were giving us loans what they weren't supposed to, that we didn't qualify for. If, in fact, it is true that all so-called black folks, or most so-called black folks, are on welfare and homeless and begging and don't have jobs or incarcerated in prison, then there's not enough of us to have qualified for these loans, for these houses that we are supposed to all have lost and destroyed this economy. But because they can play this skin color game and this race card and keep everybody distracted about what's really going on, so-called white people fall for this okey-doke shit all the time. They've been falling for it since the Civil War, and they're falling for it again. Now, this Tea Party, I submit to